What occurred that led you to distance yourself from a friend? She was convinced she was better than me in every way because she was European and upper middle class, while I'm American and lower middle class. She treated me like her little feral child she was trying to civilize and would often show me off to her other rich friends and family to laugh about my poor person ways. We're doing better now, but that's because we don't really talk anymore. The distance is much better for our friendship.
It sounds like you had a pretty complicated friendship. It's interesting how class differences can affect relationships. People can sometimes look down on each other for things out of their control. It's good that you found a way to handle it by creating some distance. Sometimes, space is what you need to maintain a healthier connection.
Discovered that she was a pathological liar. It got to the point I couldn't take it anymore because I couldn't find truth in anything she said. She lied about the little things that didn't matter at all, like what she ate for lunch, and the big things like her parents getting divorced, they didn't, her dog dying, it didn't, her being hospitalized, she wasn't, etc.
It's wild how some people just can't help but stretch the truth. I had a friend who made up stories about everything. The little stuff was annoying, but it got serious when the lies started affecting relationships. Eventually, I had to step back. It was exhausting trying to figure out what was real. Sometimes, you just have to let go of those who can't be honest with themselves or others.
She would call and ask to come over. When she did, she would spend about 5 minutes making idle chat before asking if she could use my computer. She would use my computer for about half an hour, then go. That was the only time I ever saw her, so I stopped answering her calls as I felt like she cared more about my computer than me.
It's funny how some friendships can feel one-sided. I had a friend who only reached out when she needed something. She'd come over, chat a bit, then dive into my computer for a while. After a while, I realized she wasn't really interested in hanging out. I stopped picking up her calls too. Sometimes it's better to know where you stand.
When I realized I was the only one putting any energy or effort or actual caring into a particular friendship. And this was someone I had considered my best friend. So I stopped contacting them to see if they would ever make the effort to reach out. That was nearly 5 years ago, and nope. Those 5 years also showed me how toxic that person was to everyone around them. So I think I came out ahead.
It's tough when you realize a friendship isn't mutual. I had something similar happen with someone I thought was a close friend. I put in a lot of energy, but they never really returned it. After a while, I just stopped reaching out too. Turns out it was better for me in the long run. Sometimes it's better to let go of people who bring negativity into your life.
About 3 months after she got married, she sent me unsolicited nude pictures on Snapchat. Blamed me for it, threatened to tell my girlfriend I'd sent her pictures first, sent another picture, blamed me again even though I hadn't even responded to the GF thread, then told me she thought we needed to take a break for being friends. Haven't talked to her much since then.
That's a wild situation. It's strange how quickly friendships can unravel because of misunderstandings. Sounds like she was dealing with some confusion and maybe acting out. It's probably for the best that you've given each other space. It's tough to navigate moments like that, especially when things get messy. Sometimes a break is needed to clear the air.
Good friends in high school through a social group. After high school, he became a minor drug dealer, a super pothead, and an alcoholic. That I could deal with all of these things honestly, but when he was drinking, which became all the time, he was also incredibly violent and would do the stupidest of shit. If he ever needs my help with something on a serious side, like getting sober, I'll gladly help him, but I've gotten to a point where I have zero desire to ever hang out with him.
It's tough to see a friend go down that path. We were close, shared good times, but when things changed, so did my feelings toward him. I hope he gets the help he needs, but I've learned to set boundaries. Sometimes you have to prioritize your own well-being over a friendship. It's just part of growing up, I guess.
One of my friends I used to work with at a burrito place was dating my roommate. We quit, and he moved in with us. He never once paid rent. He pretended to have a new job for 3 months while he was living with us. Eventually, we called him out and told him to pay rent or get out. One day, he just up and left. Before leaving, he bought porn with my other roommate's credit card. He would also cheat on his girlfriend constantly. He was toxic and kept telling her that he would commit suicide if she broke up with him. When he left, he said he moved to Las Vegas. Turns out, he never left the city and is working at the same burrito place. I work across the street and see him sometimes. I don't want anything to do with him anymore.
That sounds like a pretty rough situation. It's wild how someone can take advantage of friendship like that. It's a real eye-opener too. Sometimes you don't realize how toxic people can be until they're gone. It's good you called him out. It's important to set boundaries. Seeing him occasionally must be awkward, especially knowing he's still around. Best to keep your distance from that type of drama.
Got married to a woman while he had a girl on the side, then walked out on his wife after only a few months of marriage. The whole thing went down pretty shitty for the wife. I guess it happens that you meet someone new and fall more in love with them, but the way everything got handled was pretty shitty. I felt, and still feel like, it was a pretty shitty way to treat another human and not the kind of person I wanted to be friends with.
Seems like a messy situation. It's tough when someone handles their relationships poorly. It really impacts everyone involved. I get that people fall in and out of love, but there's a way to be respectful about it. That kind of behavior makes it hard to keep a friendship. Just shows how important honesty and communication are in relationships. Not everyone gets that.
Happened recently. I was looking for a job, and he told me to come into the company he works for as they had an opening. He said they'd given him the go ahead to bring me in to do a sort of proof of skills test. While there, they had me look at a big problem they've been working on for 2 weeks. I stayed for 4 hours and fixed it. He told me I did great and should expect a call back. I didn't get one. Instead, I found out that he took all the credit for what I did to fix their problem and got promoted to the position I was applying for. I was floored, and he hasn't acted like he did anything wrong. He even called me to ask for help with a project he'd been assigned.
That's pretty rough. It's always tough when someone you trust pulls a move like that. You put in the work, and he reaps the rewards without owning up to it. It's a real eye-opener about people's intentions. Best to move on from that and focus on your own path. Just remember, it's not a reflection of your skills, but more about his character. Hopefully, you find a better opportunity soon.
She thought I had more money than her and never lost a chance to make some malicious comment about it. Plus, she told all my private stuff to her boyfriend of 1 week. It took me 11 years to see that the girl was as dumb as a bag of bricks. But at least bricks are useful and don't owe me money, LOL.
It's funny how you can spend a long time not seeing the truth about someone. I had a friend like that once. Always made jokes about my finances. Never realized it just made her look bad. She spilled my secrets to her new boyfriend, like it was cool or something. Took me ages to figure out that she was just clueless. At least I can say bricks have more sense than she did.
I thought he was my best friend, as we meet up quite often to hang out, but instead I later realized that I was sort of a last resort. If he was bored and none of his other friends were available to hang out, or if his plans got canceled, then he would be down to meet. So, you can say that I was never a priority, but rather just an option. I also got the impression that he was sort of embarrassed by being seen publicly together with me. So, what was really the point of having a friendship? I promptly deleted him on Facebook and didn't respond to any of his messages.
It's tough realizing someone you consider a friend isn't really into the friendship like you are. It can feel pretty isolating when you realize you're just an option. I once had a similar experience. I would hang out with someone, but they only reached out when they needed someone. I cut ties too. It's better to have a few genuine friends than to settle for being a backup plan.
My friend and I have been working at the same place for years, in the same type of job. I left for a few years to take care of our family/kids. Then my husband's income tanked during the recession, and I had to get back to work ASAP so we could make ends meet. I was confiding in my still employed friend about how tight our money situation was, how stressed out I was about landing a position, and how happy I was to see that my dream job had just come open back at my old employer. Without missing a beat, she replied, "That sounds interesting. I think I'll apply for it." It was like a switch flipped inside my head. In an instant, she had gone from a dear friend to my mortal enemy. I never wanted to speak to her again. I managed to extricate myself from our conversation politely and nope the fuck out of there and out of her life.
That's a rough situation. It's crazy how quick things can change between friends. One moment you're sharing struggles, and the next, it feels like they're competing with you. I guess it's hard to deal with that kind of betrayal, especially when you're already stressed. It makes you question the friendship. Sometimes it's best to step back when someone doesn't have your back like you thought they did.
My best friend cheated on his girlfriend a lot. His GF was also my friend at that time. I told his GF about the cheating, and she didn't believe me. He told her that I was jealous of their relationship. I stopped talking to both of them. They're still together. I still feel sad about the girl, though.
That sounds tough. It's rough when you try to help a friend and it backfires. You did what you thought was right, but sometimes people want to believe what they want to believe. It's a shame they're still together after everything. It's hard to see someone you care about get hurt and not be able to do anything about it. Just gotta focus on moving forward, I guess.
I caught them beating their puppy. Fuck that shit, and fuck them for being such shitty people. So I bought him from them on the spot. I've had him 4 years now. He needed a lot of love and patience to overcome the damage they did, but I wouldn't trade him for the world. The former friends? Haven't spoken to them since I left their house with my new puppy.
That's a tough situation. It's good you stepped in for that puppy. A lot of animals deserve better than what they get. It sounds like he found a good home with you. Animals can be pretty resilient, and it's nice to hear he bounced back. Sometimes it's just best to cut ties with people like that. Sounds like you made the right choice for both of you.
Friend and his wife were supposedly having problems paying rent and stuff for their kid, so I gave them some money despite having money issues myself. Then, not an hour later, I see on Facebook that they just blew it all going out to a fancy restaurant and went back to complaining about their money problems and how no one would help them. Gee, I wonder why. I feel really bad for their kid. He's not going to have a good life with them.
It's tough when you try to help someone, and they don't seem to appreciate it. You make sacrifices thinking it'll make a difference, but then you see them waste that help. It's frustrating. And it's sad to think about the kid caught in all this. Sometimes people just don't see the bigger picture. You can only do so much before it's out of your hands. Just gotta move on, I guess.
I just ended a 25-year friendship after she fucked me over for the last time. A, was supposed to make my wedding cake, got too high, and didn't wake up until it was too late. My mom had to make it in the fly. B, flying across country to see a Fish concert with my 6-week-old daughter. My friend was going to pick us up in her RV with her BF and let us stay in it while camping at the show. 2 weeks before we left, she said they weren't going to be able to let us stay or pick us up because other friends were coming. No room for us. C, she houses that for us once. She was pretty broke, so I told her she could help herself to food, her family, or everything. I mean everything in the house. D, was going to house us sit again. 2 days before we were to leave, she had her electricity turn off and need $200. My husband had just gotten laid off. I couldn't lend her money. She got pissed and said she couldn't house sit. I forgave her too many times. I finally told her I was done. She did some shitty stuff to me, and I no longer wanted a friendship. Done.
I get it. Sometimes you realize a friendship isn't worth it anymore. She kept letting you down, and you tried to be understanding. It's tough to cut ties after so long, but you have to prioritize your own well-being. You deserve friends who show up when it matters. Making that decision takes courage, so it makes sense that you felt finished with it. You can't keep putting up with someone who disrespects you.
I was her enabler. She had kids young and felt she could still party, and you can just not at the level she was doing it. She'd have me watch her kids for a couple of hours, and she would show up the next day. She did the same to her mom multiple times, and eventually her mom stopped watching the kids and told me to do so as well. If she has no one to watch the kids, how is she going to be doing all that stuff? I hope she's right.
It's tough when you see a friend making choices that aren't good for them or their kids. I had a similar situation with a friend who relied on me too much. She didn't see the impact her choices had, not just on herself but on her family. It's hard to find the balance between being supportive and enabling someone's bad habits. Sometimes tough love is needed, but it's not easy to deliver.
A childhood friend has spent her 20s and early 30s hopping from one dysfunctional/abusive/iffy relationship to the next. I supported her through the abusive ones, but after meeting so many assholes and dudes clearly not interested in long-term relationships, you just can't pretend to be excited anymore. Edited to add. While I don't reach out or keep in touch anymore, I would always give her a place to stay and support if she wanted out.
It's tough watching a friend go through all that. You try to be there for them, but it can wear you down. After so many bad choices, you start feeling more like a lifeline than a friend. I get why you might pull back. Still, it's good to know she has someone to lean on if she needs it. Just hope she finds her way out eventually.
She kept getting more and more toxic with the comments she made. She always made me feel bad about being slim, about how I was a year younger than her, or about having any type of romantic interest. It got to the point that I didn't want to tell her about anything. About a month ago, I was telling her about this guy I went on a date with and I kind of liked. She was saying that I was rushing into things and that I'm stupid. I basically told her that she needs to stop being so negative towards everything I like. She didn't talk to me for about a week. I messaged her and asked, "Is everything all right between us?" She said, "Yeah, it's good." I haven't talked to her since then, and I'm in a happy relationship for about a month and a half now with a guy she called me stupid for liking. TLDR, my ex-best friend started to hate anyone I brought around that wasn't her.
Sounds like that friendship was really unhealthy. It's tough when someone close to you turns toxic and starts tearing you down instead of lifting you up. It's a good call to step back. Sometimes it's better to let those negative people go. It's nice to hear you found someone who appreciates you. Keep enjoying your new relationship and take care of yourself.
When I told him that I was getting divorced, all he said was that he was confused and didn't understand. He never really said anything after that day, never really tried to comfort me or anything like that. We didn't talk for a couple months. It bothered me, but felt like I shouldn't be bothered that my best friend didn't try to help me through that tough time.
It's pretty surprising how some friends react to big news. You'd expect some support, but sometimes they just don't know what to say. That silence can get heavy. It's rough feeling like you're alone during tough times, especially when you count on them. I guess everyone processes things differently, but it still stings a bit when they go quiet when you need them most.
Over time, my friend got so lazy it would take hours for him to reply to a text, if he would even text back at all. We would make plans almost every weekend just for him to bail last minute 90% of the time. I was the only one making any kind of effort after a while. So I finally decided that I was done wasting time on people who cannot keep their word. Looking back, it was the best decision I have ever made. I feel like he held me back most of our teenage years.
It's interesting how friendships can shift over time. I had a friend like that too. Always bailing on plans and never really invested in our hangouts. Eventually, I just stopped reaching out. It was a relief, honestly. I realized I was better off without that kind of energy around me. It made space for better connections, and I started enjoying my time more. Sometimes, letting go is necessary for growth.
Broke up with my bestie 2 weeks ago because she criticized my parenting relentlessly when she doesn't even raise her own children and likes drama a little too much in involving me in things I want no part of. Sounds petty, but I have Meniere's disease, and I'm just trying to get through life without landing on my face. I don't need anyone laughing at me in the process.
I get it. Sometimes, you just have to cut toxic people out of your life, even if it feels harsh. Your health comes first, and it's tough dealing with criticism from someone who doesn't understand what you're going through. It's about surrounding yourself with the right support, not drama. Staying grounded and focusing on what you can control is key. Keep doing what you need to for your well-being.
Constantly put down others and talk down everyone for making minor mistakes on anything. Always put himself on a pedestal and acted as he was the next Messiah. Judged others on single situations and constantly insulted them. Judged others for not getting into their dream colleges. I got into his dream college, he got waitlisted, then got pissed at me because he was better than me. That was it for me, burnt every bridge, and stopped actively talking to him.
It's tough when someone you thought was a friend turns out to be that way. He seemed to always need to feel superior, criticizing everyone around him. When he got upset about the college thing, it was clear he just couldn't handle the competition. That really made me realize some people can't handle other success. Ending that friendship felt necessary, and I haven't looked back since.
She had no concept of how the adult world worked. She'd always be asking me to do things, and when I told her I had work, she'd say, "Just tell them you're taking the day off. I'm sure they'll understand." Or when she went to Greece and wanted me to come along, she said, "Just ask your parents to pay. I'm sure they will." Once she caught sight of my bank account and legitimately started urging me to buy a house in Seattle because she believed that $10,000 was more than enough. The worst part was that she didn't ever believe me when I tried to explain to her that she had the wrong ideas about things. I just couldn't stay friends with someone who had a 5-year-old's understanding of the adult world.
I had a friend like that once. She always thought things were simple, like I could just take time off work whenever. When she suggested that I should buy a house with what I had saved, I realized she didn't get it. I tried to explain, but it was clear she wasn't listening. Eventually, it got too frustrating. Sometimes people just don't understand how the real world works. It made sense to part ways.
In a span of months, my sister nearly died. My mother had a hysterectomy and skin cancer removal. Almost everyone in my family was diagnosed with a cancer-causing syndrome, and I was just beginning to fight my clinical depression. Not once did the guy who I call my best friend for nearly 4 years ask how I or anyone in my family was doing. This is a simple gesture that goes a long way, one I would extend to even a stranger, so I figure we weren't that great of friends after all.
It's tough when you realize someone you thought was a close friend isn't really there for you. Going through all that family health stuff is heavy, and it can show you who really cares. A simple check-in can mean a lot, and it sounds like he missed an important chance. Sometimes, these experiences help us reassess our relationships, and that's okay. Just gotta focus on those who support you.
Went on a 3-week trip to Thailand with one friend. A week into it, he decides he wants to go off on his own to explore the countryside while I go party. No problem. Have your own adventure. The next day, he buys a hooker in Bangkok and spends the next few days with someone who speaks almost no English whatsoever. We met back up a few days after that, and he's still with her, and she's been following us around on the trip, just complaining about wanting to eat and sleep. Now, instead of going on a trip with a friend, I'm essentially a third wheel to a prostitute.
That sounds like a wild trip. It's funny how plans can shift suddenly. You go for a fun time, and then it's just you and a stranger who's not interested in anything but her needs. It must have been awkward hanging out with them. At least you got some stories out of it. It's not every day you end up as a third wheel to that kind of situation.
I have a friend that is so aggressive that any pleasant conversation can set her off. She isn't a Christian, and I am. I could say something like, "Oh, yeah, after church last Sunday, we got lunch at that place." And she would explode and yell at me to stop pushing my religion on her because I said the word church. She would also explode for no reason and be really harsh and mean, to the point of making me cry. And she would have no remorse and say it was just who she is.
It's tough when someone close to you has such an unpredictable temper. Conversations that should be simple can turn wild in no time. It's hard to understand why some people react so intensely, especially when you don't mean to offend. Being open about your life shouldn't lead to conflict. Sometimes you just have to step back for your own peace, even if it means losing a friendship. It's not worth the emotional toll.
At one point I met this chick through a mutual friend, and she seemed really cool. We all hang out a few more times, and eventually add each other on Facebook. I look at her wall and, oh man, was she preachy. Just your typical college kid stuff. So I'm like, whatever, I'll just unfollow all those groups she shares posts from. At that point, I knew we'd never be real close friends, but I still liked her enough. Then she made a post that encouraged shoplifting, because fuck capitalism. I immediately lost whatever respect I had for her before and clicked the unfriend button.
Yeah, I get that. Sometimes you think you vibe with someone, but then they show another side. It's like you can be chill and all, but when someone pushes that kind of agenda, it's off-putting. It's a shame, really. You just have to step back when their values aren't aligning with yours. Social media makes it easy to cut those ties, though. Just move on to better connections.
Drove 45 minutes to a concert that we couldn't get in. Didn't give me gas money after saying he would. Told me that people were jamming the next night with some guitars and drums, and that it was for sure happening. Didn't hear a damn thing. Didn't respond to my texts. We had only hung out a few times at this point, but I know where that goes, and just cut it off before it got worse.
Sounds like that friend was just full of empty promises. It's frustrating to put in effort for nothing. You drive all that way, only to be left in the dark. It's better to recognize those red flags early. Sometimes it's just easier to cut ties instead of chasing someone who doesn't seem to care. Better to invest your time in people who actually show up.
We had this group of friends of which the core consisted of 4 guys and 3 girls. Eventually, each of the girls was one of our exes, and the guy couldn't really be friends with her anymore. My ex never showed up anymore since her new boyfriend, though she blamed it on exams, and the other girl was pretty boring. So after a really great party with only the guys, we decided that was the end of it and deleted the group chat we used for the group and made a new one with only the guys. The girls weren't happy, but oh well.
Seems like things changed once the exes got involved. It's tough when past relationships complicate friendships. After that party, it made sense to focus on what was still fun. Starting a new group chat with just the guys sounds like a smart move. Keeps the vibe more relaxed without any tension. The girls' reactions were probably expected, but sometimes you gotta do what's best for the crew.
When I realized how shitty of a person he was. Sneaky, slimy snake. Lied about everything, stole stuff from me. I was pretty oblivious to a lot of it, because I always see the good things in people and ignore the bad. He changed after he had a kid, but part of me believes that sneaky, slimy snake is still in there somewhere.
It's tough to see someone you trust turn out that way. It's like they wear a mask for so long, and when it comes off, it's shocking. I get wanting to see the good in people, but sometimes it blinds us to the truth. It's weird how having a kid can change someone, but some traits seem to stick around. Just have to be careful with who you let in.
Friend I used to party with became a Christian. She quit drinking, went to church several times a week, etc. She told me she was worried people would judge her for it, and I assured her I wouldn't. I grew up very Christian and respect the religion. I was sober by then, alcoholic, so I didn't mind that we couldn't party. But then she got to a point where everything she talked about was focused on Jesus and being saved. The zealous attitude I grew up with turned me off. She started to constantly ask me for money for her mission trips. I slow faded on that friendship. It was too much for me. I had no issue with religion being part of her life, but it has become her entire life.
I had a friend who turned to religion after years of partying. At first, it was cool since I was sober too. But then, it got overwhelming. Every conversation was about Jesus, and she started asking for money for trips. I didn't mind her finding faith, but it felt like she lost herself in it. I gradually stepped back. Sometimes, changes in someone can create distance, even if you once connected well.
I've lived in college towns for the past 10 years, so a lot of people come and go. I've distanced myself from close friends when they come back to town and don't reach out or cancel plans with me while they're in town. It's happened 6 or 7 times now. Close friends, acquaintances, and everything in between. I don't understand.
It's kind of rough when friends just drift like that. You invest time and energy into relationships, and then it's like they forget about you once they come back around. It's tough not to take it personally. I've had similar experiences, where I feel like I'm the one putting in the effort. I guess it's just how college towns can be. People are busy moving on. It's a bit disheartening, though.
I told a friend that I know for more than 20 years that I didn't want to see him anymore. We were in school, stayed friends after school. Somehow he figured out his life, but I don't. I live in a messy apartment. I am not very social, and I'm not happy with my life. The last few times he visited me, I had the feeling that he was looking down to me, not in a positive way. I could see that he was enjoying to complain about my messy apartment and show me how easy it is for him to make friends or pick up girls. I suffer to depressions from time to time and have to fight sometimes to keep control of my life. Having someone like him around didn't make it easier for me. Every time he left, I felt like shit for 3 weeks. I'm not sure if I did the right thing, and sometimes I miss you, Ronnie.
It sounds like you made a tough decision. Being friends for so long, it's hard to let go. But if he's making you feel worse about yourself, maybe it's better for both of you. You deserve people in your life who support you, not bring you down. It's normal to question your choices, especially when you have a history together. Just remember, focusing on your own well-being comes first.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.